This
Kindly
conference will
unmute
now
your
be
mic.
recorded.
Very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Honorable Secretary General Dr. G.P. Agarwal, Dr. Sanjeev Laik, Executive Secretary WASME, and TDP Global, I, Dr. Megha Chadda, Deputy Director WASME, it's my privilege to welcome all the dignitaries who have taken out their valuable time to participate in the webinar. Let me brief about WASME, a global organization having member representatives across globe, spearheading the cause and development and promotion of SMEs worldwide through policy advocacy, information dissemination, conferences, seminars, events, trainings, publication, network linkages, and many more since 1980. WASME has the consultative and observer status of the United Nations. Let me invite Dr. Bhavna Chabra, Professor Finance, IBS Gurgaon and Managing Editor, Samvad to moderate the session. Dr. Bhavna Chabra, please welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much, Megha ma'am. And ladies and gentlemen, eminent panelists, speakers, and invited experts, and all the audience. I, Dr. Bhavna Chabra, extends a very warm good afternoon to one and all present here. I welcome you all to this virtual session on a very interesting topic, that is the Budget Briefcase 2022. This is being organized by TDP Global and WASME and supported by BSC's IPF and Telesolutions Private Limited. So I extend a very warm welcome to you. And all the speculative information which has spread across the media today and industry has subsidized the presentation of Budget 2022 by the Honorable Finance Minister of India. So today we have assembled here on this virtual platform, which is organized by TDP Global and WASME, to critically understand the jargons of the technical data presented today by the Honorable Finance Minister. We have invited the experts from various sectors, which will help us to make it easy and to understand that what this budget brings to all of us individually and what value it is going to add towards the Indian economy as a whole. I am hopeful that we will all have a great learning experience from this session today. Before we begin the discussion on the budget, may I invite Dr. Sanjeev Laik to deliver the welcome address. Dr. Sanjeev Laik is the Executive Secretary, WASME. Dr. Sanjeev, may I kindly request you to please welcome our guests and audience.
Thank you, Bhavna. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I, Dr. Sanjeev Laik, Executive Secretary of WASME. On behalf of WASME and TDP Global, I heartily welcome CA Dr. Ashok Haldia, Chairman IIIP of ICAI and former Secretary ICAI and Honorary Board Mentor TDP Global Consulting. Let me just welcome Mr. Narendra Wadhwa, President, Commodity Participants Association of India, CPAI, and Managing Director, Sky Capital Services Limited. Mr. Praveen Roy, Founding Independent Director at Nazara Tech, NSE listed, and serial entrepreneur, co-founded Paymate, and also the Senior Advisor to WASME. CA Ashok Vasmani, Founder Partner, Raj K. Sri and Company, Chartered Accountants, and Mr. Sandeep Mahendru, CEO, MI Exchange, to this live webinar on Budget Briefcase 2022-23. The whole discussion on the Union Budget 22-23 presented by our Honorable Finance Minister Sri Nirmala Sitharaman. Now, according to the Article 112 of the Indian Constitution, the Union Budget of a year, also referred to as the annual financial statement, is a statement of the estimated receipts and expenditure of the government for that particular year. Union Budget keeps the account of the government's finances for the fiscal year that runs from 1st April to 31st March. union budget is classified into revenue budget and capital budget. And today, our Honorable Finance Minister has already presented this budget for 2022-23. One sentence we can say that no change in income tax or capex mahotsav and crypto tax makes debut. And for MSME who are already participating in this webinar, some of the highlights: emergency credit line guarantee scheme for MSMEs extended till March 2023, and this had provided much needed additional credit to more than 130 lakh MSMEs, and this will help to mitigate the adverse impacts of the MSMEs sector post COVID-19. And some of the other announcements, the hospitality and the related services, especially those for MSME, were yet to regain their pre-pandemic level of business. Considering these aspects, the government announced an extension of guarantee cover by another 50,000 crore, taking the total cover under the scheme to 5 lakh crore, with additional amount being embarked exclusively for the hospitality and related enterprises. The center said the credit guarantee trust for MSME scheme would be revamped with required infusion of funds, and this would facilitate additional credit of 2 lakh crore for micro and small enterprises and expand employment opportunities. Other announcements of the big infra push announcements of these projects like 5G auction in 2022 for mental health, virtual currencies come under tax net, 400 Bande Bhatram, railways in railways budget and more. I'm not going into details because we have got invited esteemed panelists to discuss on the topic. So thank you for this, and I again welcome to all the panelists and the participants to this webinar. Over to you, Dr. Fowler.
Yeah. Thank you so much, sir, and for the welcome address. And rightly said, and very rightly said that this budget has given us no change specifically in the taxation. But let us see what all will unfold on the other fronts. And very beautifully you gave the introduction of the budget, and I'm sure that our audience is very eagerly looking forward to a very interesting session ahead by our experts. So before we begin with the panel discussion, let us first hear the opening remarks from a very eminent and a very distinguished speaker, which we have with us today, Dr. Ashok Haldia ji. Dr. Ashok Haldia ji is the chairman IIIPI of ICAI and a former secretary of ICAI. He is an honorary board member and mentor to TDP Global Consulting Firm. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. It is indeed always a pleasure to hear from you. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Ashok Haldia ji. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Bhavna Chavda. Ladies and gentlemen, indeed a great pleasure to be with the distinguished panel and the audience from the MSME on what the budget holds for them. The budget which was pronounced by the Honorable Finance Minister this morning. Let me, while Mr. Sanjeev Layak has very elaborately and elegantly dealt with what the budget has for the MSME, let me put some perspective on the budget and the MSME. You know, the MSME are very integral, very important part of the budget exercise. For the simple reason that we have more than 6.6 crores MSME in the country. 95% of them are micro and 5% the small, and the remaining is the medium. They together employ 40% of the nation's workforce, contribute 30% of the nation's GDP, and 50% of its export. That being the position that the contribution that the MSME makes to the Indian economy, obviously a budget has to focus and cannot remain oblivious of what the MSME expects and look from the finance minister. Now, let me also look at another aspect. This year's budget is a typical budget. The last year, the finance minister said that this is once in a 100-year budget. And this year budget, we should look in continuation of the last year budget. And I would go even a step beyond. We should look this budget also in continuation of the budget prior to the last year budget. For the simple reason that we were impacted by the pandemic, the first wave, the second wave, and the third wave, we are currently faced with the third wave. While the budget are the formal outlay and of the income and expenditure of the government, but in between, because of the pandemic, government took a number of fiscal, non-fiscal regulatory measures to support the industry, the business, the MSME, and a common man impacted by the pandemic. And we have seen the number of measures by the government, both including for the MSMEs, and those included easy availability of the credit, financial restructuring programs, the credit guarantee facilities, and so on and so forth. The focus was largely on enabling them to tide over with the cash constraints or the liquidity constraints. Are we over from the economic stress? Well, that is certainly not. While the economy is in a recovering momentum, we expect the growth of 8.2%, and the MSME has also the general health of the SME is on improvement. If seen from perspective or the credit flow to the MSME the last years, which has grown by about 12%, and for the medium maybe more than 25%. But then they continue to reel under the impact of the wave third, not necessarily as serious as was the impact of the wave one and the wave two, because they are not faced with the lockdown this time. Now, what we were looking in terms of MSME, one, the direct measures, the measures which directly impinge, which directly to the advantage of which directly focus on the MSME. Many of them that Dr. Sanjeev pointed out, both in terms of the emergency credit line guarantee scheme, maybe in terms of the extension of the guarantee cover for the MSME, the new scheme which is called the RAMP, which would to enhance the competitiveness and the efficiencies of the MSMEs, and so on and so forth. These are directly benefit, and they would directly make available the easy credit for the MSME. But another is the indirect measures, the measures which would propel the growth of the MSME, which would create the ease of doing business for the MSME, and therefore they would contribute to their growth, they would contribute to their financial health, and also in particular to the liquidity. And what does that would mean? That would mean that the budget focus on the growth, budget focus that is on the demand, the investment, the exports, and the employment. And if the budget focus on these, the benefits of that focus would percolate down or trickle down to the MSME, and not only that, they would also be key beneficiary of such a strategy in the approach that the budget would adopt to. For example, the finance ministers, while announcing for the railways, she said that every station would have a new product, focus on the new product development in that area. And if that happens, that would mean the growth of the MSMEs in that area. So that would propel the growth of the MSMEs. Similarly, if we look in terms of the housing, the 50 or the new developing units as announced by the finance minister during the year, that would increase the demand, for the product of the MSMEs and also the growth of the MSMEs. The third thing that we should look in terms of is the startups. Startups are very important ingredient of the industry economy today. And what the government has done is in terms of the long-term capital gains, the uniform rate of 15%, and also the benefit under Section 115 in terms of extending the period for availment of the benefit under Section 115. To me, what is most important, all of these, is the impetus, is the growth in the capex from 5.54 lakh crore last year to something around 7.50 lakh crores, about an increase of about 35% in the capex, and that capex would largely, goes into the infrastructure development. And that infrastructure development, because of the various schemes, various programs that the government has announced, and the 7 of those that the finance ministers did touch upon in our budget, that would generate the demand in the economy, that would generate the income, employment, and consequently the growth of the MSMEs, both in terms of the number of SMEs, their financial health, and also the employment to be provided by the MSME. So I would, while as Dr. Bhavna and Dr. Sanjeev said, there are no benefits like tax advantages or the tax levies. Often we look at the budget possibly from the angles of what savings it's going to contribute to us as an individual or as a business unit. While that may not be the case, but certainly in terms of propelling the growth of the economy, growth of the MSMEs, and also in terms of ease of doing business for them. A number of measures were announced. The government has been taking measures for ease of doing business for last many years, and many more the Honorable Finance Ministers had announced, which also include the interlinking and also widening the scope of various portals for the MSMEs. That's a great advantage. Now, if you look me at in terms of what we had expected in terms of MSMEs before the 1st of February, that is till yesterday, and what has come out and what we would have expected more, and I would say more in the qualitative terms, because I often believe that the direct benefits which directly leads to increase in the income or the saving in the taxes is helpful, but what is important is the conducive business environment. That is more important. And I believe two things possibly which would have looked at before this announcement of the budget was, one is that MSME itself is a very large spectrum. You have micro enterprises, you have small, you have medium, and they start from 1,000 rupees to the crores and crores of rupees. That's the bandwidth of MSMEs. And obviously, they would have different horizon or of their needs, the requirements from the government, from the banks, from the ecosystem, and therefore possibly one would have thought if there could be a separate dispensation or the ministry for the micro enterprises. That's the one thing that would have looked into. And the second thing is, in terms of ease of doing business, can we further ease up for the MSMEs? We have been talking about for this, can there one-stop clearances for the MSME made feasible, possible, time-bound clearances for the MSMEs. While we have been talking it for a long, but when we interact with the MSMEs, the things have improved, but possibly needs more and more improvement. So in a nutshell, I would say the budget has a lot more for the MSME growth. They should not see only in terms of the tax advantage, direct and the indirect, but in terms of the overall growth prospects. And I would believe this budget sets the growth. As I said, we should look this budget in continuation of the last year budget, and the focus was on recovery, on maintaining the momentum of recovery that was the first during the year, during the current year, that is 22-23, and also acting as a stepping stone for a double-digit growth in the coming years. So with that, thank you very much for being with us, and also to the distinguished panel. Keenly looking forward to hear their views. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, sir, for your enlightenment on the budget 2022, specifically about the MSME sector. It is, as I said, that it is always a pleasure hearing and learning specifically from you. And very rightly said that MSME sector is the backbone of the country. And since all the sectors are interrelated with each other, we are very, very positive that a lot of employment would be generated through this MSME sector, whether it is the infrastructure investments coming up or whether it is the railways investments coming up. So we are very hopeful for the MSME sector. And specifically, very rightly said that it is above all, we require a conducive business environment in the country. And that is where we are heading to, increasing our index for ease of doing business in India as well. So let us hope more positivity coming up, and let us hear from the other panelists also. So thank you so very much, Haldia sir, once again for your kind words. So it is the time, ladies and gentlemen, to move on to the next interesting part of the session, that is the panel discussion. For that, we have very, very eminent panelists who have joined us, and one by one, we will hear from them, and we will take up the question answers towards the end of the discussion. So I would request the panelists to present their views for about 5 to 7 minutes each, and then we will take up Q&A in the last. But before I hand over the dais to our esteemed panelists, let us review the situation today. There are a few questions in the mind of the general audience. As the layman also, we have few questions in our mind, and I'm throwing those questions today so that in a way our panelists can answer them. So the first question is that will this budget 2022 will help us to revive the job creation, which has taken a strong hit during this pandemic? Then the next question is, will this budget, create more spotlight on the infrastructure, or will there be more, emphasis given on the healthcare sector? Will there be any sigh for the taxation? Definitely, that is the most important thing. As a layman, also everybody is interested to know that. And then what about the bad bank, and what about the GST tribunal? Will there be any good news about them also? And what all steps we all think that government would take up to tackle the issue of inflation, which we are witnessing? Specifically, now it's not about the V-shape recovery. I've just gone through the numbers, and I've just seen the graphs which were presented post budget today, that the recovery is showing in a very W-shaped form. So that is another yet a positive thing which we are seeing from this budget. So with these words, I would like to call upon our first panelist, Mr. Prabir Roy. We have Mr. Narinder Wadhwaji first, and he is the President, Commodity Participants Association of India, CPAI, and Managing Director, Sky Capital Services Limited. Sir, we welcome you to this discussion, and over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Although it's an opportunity for government to present this budget and give their statements, policy statements, but this year has been very difficult, a different budget. We have been used to listening our finance minister carrying, hefty baggages and briefcases. So this time again, it is a digital budget. I welcome that also. So in one liner, if I have to say, I'll say it is a future focused budget, a huge outlay of capex in this budget, very short, very crisp, and no populist measure in this budget in spite of elections which are coming up in this state. I'm sorry, there is a instability in my connectivity. I'll rejoin. You can take the other panelist first. I'll fix this issue and then come again.
Okay, sure, sir. Sure. So in the series, we have next Mr. Prabir Roy, who is the founding independent director at Nazara Technologies Limited. Also, okay, am I audible? Yeah. So,
yeah,
so
I'm having video, so I didn't.
Yeah, sure, sir. Sure, sir. Meanwhile, we can invite the next panelist, and we have with us Mr. Prabir Roy, who is the founding independent director at Nazara Technologies and also a serial entrepreneur, co-founder of Paymate. Sir, we welcome you, and over to you, sir.
I see some technical glitches are there with
Okay.
Praveen.
Okay, fine.
Yeah,
So,
he
okay.
has joined. He has joined. Yes, Praveen, you can
Hello.
continue.
Okay, so is Mr. Prabir Roy in the meeting? And sir, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you. Yes, sir, we can hear you. Yeah. Okay, so I think there is some connectivity issues at his end. So we can move on to our next panelist. And do we have Narendra Wadhwaji back with us, or should I go to the next panelist then?
Yeah, I think you can go. Let me try to see if I can. It's going off and on actually from my side.
Okay, sure, sir, sure.
I come
So
after the next one.
absolutely okay, sir. We will wait for you. Okay, so the next panelist we have with us is CA Rohit Vaswani ji. He is the founder partner of Raj Keshri and Company Chartered Accountants. We are very happy to have you with us, Rohit ji. And may I invite you to please share your views on the budget 2022?
Thank you, Dr. Bhavna, and very good afternoon to all of you and distinguished panelists and the audiences who have joined this budget discussion. And I think this is the one of the early most discussion which is happening in the country after the presentation of the Union Budget 2022. And as it has been said that this is the digital budget, no doubt about it. It is a digital budget, and the whole, if you see the schema of the budget, there are so many proposals which are increasing the digital economy in future also, and a roadmap has been shown for digital rupee also. And we may have a Indian rupee also, like the on the technology of blockchain, like cryptocurrency. And this announcement seems to be very innovative announcement by the Ministry of Finance. Otherwise, if you see, it is an expenditure budget. And if you see the capital expenditure, which has been kept at a very high level, and apart from the capital expenditure, the last year the budget was due to the pandemic, the fiscal deficit has gone up to 9.2%. And now they have managed it to at the 6.9% in the revised estimate for the 21-22. And for the budgetary estimates 22-23, the fiscal deficits has been budgeted at 6.4% about. And that's why this is going to be further 2-3 years the expenditure budget. And these shortfall, how they are going to meet, it is a challenge for the government also to meet out the fiscal deficit. And we have reached to an era when we used to say aggressively that India is a developing country and we need the deficit financing so far as the growth is concerned. And actually my area being the indirect taxes and GST, So I would like to touch upon few minutes on this area. Otherwise, all other expert I am sure will cover the nitty-gritties of the financial proposals. So far as the indirect taxes are concerned, the Honorable Finance Minister announced today that during January 22, the peak of the GST collection has been achieved, and that is about 1,41,000 crore is the collection for January 2022. Now, if you see the collection of the GST, that is not much increasing. If you see the overall revenue which is coming to the government, income tax itself is contributing 15% of the total collection, whereas the GST is at 16%. And apart from the 15% income tax, we have the corporation tax also from direct tax side, and that is also about 15%. And even if we total the custom collection, GST collection, and excise collection, that is lacking behind the direct tax collection. And I don't see that it is very increasing, it is very encouraging picture for the government so far as the indirect taxes are concerned when the GST was rolled out. But now, since last year, if we compare the year collection, the GST collection is going upward. And I'm sure and I'm hopeful that this upward trend will continue, and the contribution of the GST to the total revenue collection of the country will gradually increase. It is almost about to 5 years for implementation of the GST, and in the budget speech, she has not talked about much about the GST, amendments which are being brought in the Finance Bill 2022. But there are major structural changes in the Finance Bill, which is proposing in the CGST amendment in the CGST Act. But so far as these proposals are kept after the discussion in the GST Council. But now, if you see the invoice level matching, the one-to-one matching will be replaced by the one-way communication only, and it will be portal level matching. And earlier, which was there, that the invoice level matching will be there once the supplier uploads the invoice, that will be approved or rejected by the recipient. That scenario is over, and now the government or the GST portal will give the ITC which is available to the recipients. So that is the major change. And one of the relaxation which has been provided in the GST is relating to claiming the input tax credit, which was earlier up to September of the next year. Now it is proposed to be increased to the 30th of November of the next year from the end of the financial year. And this is, welcome step. And one point further, I would like to say, although there are a few more changes, but all the other dignitaries are there. Now there was allowability of the input tax credit on provisional basis. Now the government is saying, no, it will not be a provisional, it will be a self-assessed input tax credit. And when it is a self-assessed input tax credit, and after that the interest penalty, and you claim it wrongly, all the repercussions will be following. So this is a policy change in the implementation of the GST from when it was tabled, it was rolled out during July 2017. So this is the few points which I like it to highlight here. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so very much, sir. And very rightly said by you that it is the expenditure budget. A lot of announcements have been done for the capex, and very rightly, given insight by you on the CGST Amendment Act also, and so was on the GST claiming the input tax credit. Thank you so very much, sir, for joining us. We will take up the questions for you towards the end, and let us go to our next panelist. And so the next panelist we have with us today is Mr. Sandeep Mahendru, who is the CEO of M1 Exchange. Mr. Mahendru, we are very happy to have you with us. And can we hear your views on the budget 2022?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Bana. And thank you for inviting me. And good afternoon to all the panelists and all the members who are attending this. Yes, the budget has been very growth oriented, as everyone is saying. And while I was listening to her speech, she had kept it. I mean, all I could find is it was a very simple speech and nothing very complex about the whole budget. In terms of SMEs, what they are getting in return is that the business opportunities are going to be immense and huge for SMEs as a whole. Because, and like Bhavna had said in the beginning, is it going to increase the job creation? Yes, it is going to increase the job creation. The whole budget is focused in a manner that the capacity in India is being invested in. The country's capacity to handle, like ports capacity, trains capacity, roads capacity, logistics parks, digital universities, foreign universities being allowed in, gift city, like these digital banks being allowed, being set up in 75 or X number of digital banks being set up in digital villages. So all these points are leading towards putting the money in the capacity expansion for the country. And as the capacity expansion increases, the business environment enables us to do more. So how the world looks at India, does India have enough ports that the exports can be managed in large quantity? Does India has enough connectivity within the cities that the goods transportation can be managed easily? So these kind of points which come up in the international forums for any country to flourish or the business to flourish. I mean, this is where the investment is going, and this investment in turn will bring business to all the SMEs. They will get an opportunity to work with defense sector, with infra sector, with all the logistics sector, and so on and so forth. I mean, every sector, and which in turn will also increase the consumption, and thereby the economy should revive. There is the other side of the budget, which is about rural income expansion, which again leads to the fact that as the rural consumption goes up, the economy further grows in the whole ecosystem, and the government has kept some 2.3 lakh crore rupees towards the MSP that is going to be given to the farmers. This is a very, very big step in terms of enhancing the rural income. The simplification of the processes is another area which I love about this government, is bringing transparency and simplification in the processes. Somewhere the finance minister said that some 25,000 compliances and 1,400 laws have been repealed in the last few years to make doing business simpler. And further, they are now involving states so that the overlapping of the laws between the union laws and the state laws is reduced. The IT systems are used for integrating state system and the central. So all this will come to support the MSMEs in terms of their business growth. ECGLS scheme, which is a direct benefit, CGTSME scheme, which is a very, very direct benefit, and 2 lakh crore being allocated for the CGTSME scheme. And out of that, out of ECGLS, a special fund being carved out for hospitality sector, travel sector, which is the most impacted sector all are aware about. This will help them, give them confidence to reinvest in business. The SMEs who do not have collateral to take loan, they can approach their banks to avail the CGT SME scheme, under which the bank will take a guarantee from the government and in turn give the credit to the SMEs. So these schemes are very direct. They are putting money in the hands of the SME entrepreneurs, and thereby they can grow their business. Another important factor, and that's the last point I would like to put in, is that what has worked for all of us in the last 2 years, and it is yielding results, whether it is for the startups or whether it is for the SME manufacturing ecosystem. Again, that is one of the focus area which has been talked about in the budget, which is the equity capital laws and the VC funds laws that needs to be further relaxed so that this area can grow, because this area is giving results. here the risk of the capital is on the VC funds, and the entrepreneur can grow in multi times using the capital expansion rather than just using the loan capital. So these are some of the points I personally, as an entrepreneur, also as an SME entrepreneur, also I have loved all these points, and I feel yes, this will help our country and economy to grow further. That's all from my side.
Thank you so very much, Sandeep sir. It was really very interesting to hear your views on specifically on MSCs, and very rightly said that rural expansion, rural income expansion is the need of the hour. Though we all know that the population working, in the agriculture sector and the other priority sector is they have a good volume, but still, in spite of that, we still need to have more, growth. We are expecting more growth in that also. And very rightly said, we would like to, sir, hear more from you on the impact of the budget on the capital market also. That section we have reserved for for you. So. So we will take up questions again, as I said in the end. And let me go back to again Mr. Narendra Vadwaji, President Commodity Participants Association of India and Managing Director, Sky Capital Services Limited. So, sir, can we hear you now? Okay. Ankit ji, is Mr. Vadwa with us?
He's not there actually.
Okay.
Praveen is here.
Okay, fine. So we then go to again Mr. Praveen Roy, founding independent director at Nazara Technologies and a serial entrepreneur, co-founder of PayMe. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, Bhavna. Thank you, Dr. Sanjeev. Sorry, today I don't know why we are having very erratic internet services in Bombay. So normally one has to either put on video or audio, and I hope we can manage both today. But in case I need to, I might switch off video. So thanks, Sandeep and Dr. Haldia before me. So I think looking at the budget, as the first speaker was saying, that there is nothing specific in this budget for MSMEs as such. But if you look at it from the last 2 years, whatever steps have been done in this year is a logical extension of what is already the pillars of which have been put in the last 2 budgets. For example, the government has just also extended and also expanded the ECLGS program, which was announced in the previous budgets at 450,000 crores. Now the government has put in 50,000 more crores and extended that up to March 23. So that is one of the pillars on which MSMEs financing and credit is absolutely dependent on. Of course, on the other side, as I always say, that MSMEs can be divided into 3 buckets. One is credit and finance. Second is administrative and bureaucracy. And third is capacity building. Now, if you look at the budget in terms of what it is for credit and finance, yes, it's extension of the credit facilities that were initiated earlier, which is Mudra loans, PMMY, loan guarantee, ECLGS. These were some of the programs of the yesteryears which are continuing to go forward. So these kind of credit helps MSMEs bridge their overdraft, working capital requirements, and short-term credit requirements, including access to credit. On the other side is the financing side, that how can the MSMEs, after they meet their day-to-day operational credit requirements or cash flow requirements, what do they need to do for expansion and scaling? For that, you need debt infusion, access to equity capital, access to state government schemes, SIDBI, etc. So these come in and play a role in venture entrepreneurship by providing seed capital or post-seed capital to MSMEs to enhance their capital base so that they can become bigger and scale, go after larger orders markets and become self-sufficient. So both are required actually. Both immediate term credit is required, and which has been put in place over the last 2 years. There are still some gaps in some of the credit programs, which I will come to in the next bucket. But again, the finance side also is a pillar where MSMEs in this budget have been given boost for agriculture tech startups. That is a new startup category in agriculture, which will get funds from either central government or from specialized institutions. The other is for defense industry. MSMEs have never been able to play a large role in defense, but I think this year what I'm seeing is that with the startup program and in defense indigenization, both are married, and so MSMEs, like in Republic Day, these drones are coming, 1,000 drones came. That is from a small startup, from a IIT startup, and it is for defense indigenization Atmanirbhar program. Earlier, these were never given any much boost, but I think this is a great recognition that the next phase of growth for MSMEs can be in agriculture, of course, as I mentioned. Secondly, in defense. Third, of course, in manufacturing. Fourth, as I think Sandeep was mentioning, that either government can directly help MSMEs through credit and finance, or they can increase capex programs, infrastructure spending programs, which the downstream of that, the cascading effect of that, boosts up all MSME products demands for goods and services. For example, again in this budget, there has been some deployment for the contact services industries, which have been very badly hit last year. They are the only sector which have not recovered as yet, and I think it will take 1 or 2 years more for contact services based like hospitality, travel, tourism, etc. to come back. Agriculture is continuing to grow at the same run rate. Industry by and large is bouncing back, including the subsectors of mining, etc. The third is our services sector is still struggling. So this budget is giving that, as I mentioned, ECL, GS, predominantly to help the contact services to sustain them a little more. So some of these are direct things, and indirectly, obviously, through the multimodal expenditures, the 7 engines of growth, including the rail corridors of one product, one stop, of mapping the product to market through use of railway stations earmarked for direct exploiting of the demand. So these, I think, will by and large give a boost to MSME sectors. Now, as I think Dr. Haldia mentioned, or the second speaker mentioned, that MSMEs in India are the backbone, right? 95% are micro, nano, and they contribute to about 50% of exports, 40% of GDP. But MSMEs contribute 50% to exports and about 40% to manufacturing. India is doing well in exports during the pandemic. So I think the trickle-down effects of the export growth in India to nearly now, it's about $230 billion, and will give a cascading effect that MSMEs will probably play a larger role in ensuring that the export sector continues to steam ahead. So that could be one big opportunity. And the second opportunity I feel is through the manufacturing sector with more PLI schemes. Hopefully the PLI scheme, the cascading effects will hopefully play a role in the big enterprises getting orders, setting up new capacity, and then demand for ancillary and auxiliary products and services, which MSMEs will be only too happy, and they're the best to provide. So one bucket, as I said, was finance and credit. The second is the administrative and bureaucracy, and there I feel we have really not done much, because see, major problem, as we all know in MSMEs, your receivables are in 90 days. Now it's gone higher. To apply for a loan or a short-term working capital need, the process and the bureaucracy and the paperwork takes more than 90 days. Plus, once your loan is sanctioned, the disbursal also takes time. It doesn't come out in one shot. So the amount of time the entrepreneur has to run from pillar to post to get access to credit, apply for loan, ensure loan disbursement, ensure the full loan is disbursed as versus only what is securitized is disbursed. All this puts a lot of burden on the entrepreneur, and he says, I don't want anything to do with this. Therefore, all these loans which we have kept aside, the credit we have kept aside, there has to be a trickle down effect to the 60 million MSMEs. Okay, today 4.5 to 5.5 million actually have access to credit to banks. Let us take it from 4.5, 5.5 to another 10 million MSMEs. If we can target the next decile, which gets access to credit and is getting access to cheap loans, subvented loans by 2%, then I think that will dramatically change the complexion of MSMEs from before. But if you're constantly giving access to funds and servicing the 4 million or 5 million, then the long tail of MSMEs is still not getting access to credit. So they are getting stuck. But if there are opportunities, there are advantages in manufacturing, but MSMEs are not getting access to capital in the right way, then you will continue to not get that explosive growth that you want. So this is a bit of administrative bureaucracy related stuff and delayed payments, loan disbursement, loan approval, and some of those issues. And the last is capacity building. Like, I think this budget has given a lot of impetus to upskilling and reskilling. A budget has been kept aside. I think quite a large amount has been kept aside for reskilling and upskilling of human capital, which, as we all know, 110 million people are employed in MSMEs, but they are the major backbone of jobs opportunities in the country. But we are getting stuck in that vicious circle of not being able to upgrade our skills, not being able to upgrade our products, not being able to upgrade our quality. So we are getting stuck. So hopefully with upskilling and reskilling, not only of human capital, but also innovation through innovation funds, VC funds, R&D. This will help us to get escape velocity for MSMEs to also play a very determined and positive role in the GDP growth. And I think I have said this before, and Dr. Sanjeev would know about it, is that in the 60s and 70s, they used to say public sector is the commanding heights of the economy. I've been feeling for the last 2 years that actually that may be the case or may not be the case, but MSMEs are the backbone of this country, the spinal cord. So that if we keep that in mind and give more impetus and focus to MSMEs in the years to come or in the next 1 or 2 years, you will automatically see a good growth rate of MSMEs per se, where everybody benefits and MSMEs get into new sectors of manufacturing, export, and even services. So just these short comments I thought I would make and relate it somewhat to the budget. I'd be happy to take questions on how to solve for some of these problems which I have mentioned. There is last mile solutions also, but perhaps in the next round we can talk about some of the technology innovations and enablements that MSMEs today have at their fingertips. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so very much, Mr. Sandeep Mahendruji, and it was really nice to hear you. And I must acknowledge and share with all of you here that no doubt about what you have said, that we require more credit growth in the case of MSME sector. But if we look at the numbers at the macro level, the credit growth which have taken place in India is showing very good trend. It is at 9.2%. As on 31st December 2021, as compared to 6.6% as compared to the last year. So it is showing a very good trend, and we are very hopeful that definitely this MSME sector will see a revive, because we all know that during this pandemic, the most or the worst affected sector was the informal economy, and as well as the small and medium scale enterprises. So definitely we are hopeful that this pandemic is more or less will be over, and with more cautious to the healthcare sector, we would be able to revive the credit growth in the case of MSME sector. And as very rightly said again by you, sir, that for this PLI scheme, this PLI scheme is also a very good initiative. As our Honorable Finance Minister also stated today, that 60 lakh jobs are expected to see through this PLI scheme specifically. So we are very hopeful and very, very positive for the growth of the Indian economy in the coming time to come. Thank you so very much once again, sir. And now we are open to the question and answer. And before I take up the question and answer, can we again see Mr. Narendra Wadhwa ji? Sir, are you there in the meeting? Can we have you now?
I am there. Sorry,
okay,
sorry.
No, it's absolutely okay, sir. We all know there are technical glitches, at everyone's end. And so for that also, there was an announcement in the budget itself today. So over to you, sir. Yeah.
So although I in the initial talk, I gave my one-liner also, it's a futuristic budget. I missed the earlier discussion. So from the industry side, from the commodity and investment market, so one thing I like about this budget is that, for taxation, there is a stability and predictability of tax regime. No new taxation, no tickering, earlier we used to have. So that is the best part of this budget. And the capital expenditure which is coming, what she has announced, which will trickle down to the growth in our economy. MSME sector is, I totally agree with you, was the most affected sector. Something concrete was required, is required for this sector. Just extending ECLGS scheme and I was just hearing Mr. Praveer Roy that there's hardly any credit offtake. But see, sooner we have to realize that we have to depend on the risk capital more than the bank credit in our country, and we have to encourage listing and private equity. A lot of money is there, so we have to come out of the earlier dependence on the banks. So that is all from my side. I think we are getting late, so we can have question answer session.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so very much, Wadhwa ji, for giving us insight about the budget. And definitely, maybe not through the bank credit, but yes, through the other ways and means of finance, we will be able to again see a very positive outlook for the MSME sector and for the economy as a whole. Okay, so now I'm taking few questions, and the panelists, anybody whosoever is interested to answer, or otherwise I will take specific questions. Yeah. So can we see some questions from the audience if you have, or otherwise what all questions I have received from the audience before coming to the session, I will take up that. Okay, Ankit ji, can we unmute the audience? Yeah, can we take up the questions live, or?
Bhavna, they can unmute themselves also. No issue.
Okay. So what all questions I've already received, I will ask them one by one. And so the first question is that since we all know that 30% tax we have heard from the income coming from the crypto. So do you think that it will help the illegal transactions which are taking place in crypto, and the illegal things which are actually funded by the cryptocurrency? Okay, so this question I can give it to Mr. Praveer Roy. Yeah, yes, sir.
Yeah, that's a good question, Dr. Bhavna. I think most people were expecting that not that crypto would become illegal, but now it has got legality because you are taxing it.
Yes, definitely. So, sir, can we see that all the different crypto exchanges would be more regulated, and can we see some more regulation coming up in the next few months? Means would it be done through RBI or maybe SEBI, or which body do you think that would be taking charge and would be doing more regulations for the crypto?
Yeah, so what happens is initially we say it's not legal, it's not allowed, and slowly we recognize it, and then states see it as an opportunity to tax it for revenue. So it's a two-sided coin. On one side, yes, you get legitimacy, but at the same time, you have to do full declaration and you will be charged a very high tax rate compared to other assets. Which is not to disincentivize the channel, but I think to legitimize it further, because the incentive should be greater than the disincentives of not being below the radar. So if you look at other things which happen in this country, you will find that a lot of things which when we are growing up was not allowed. Today they're all allowed, but they are now at a very gambling or casino. They're all available for Aam Aadmi and public, but it is taxed very highly. So it's a good move, I think, personally. And
Yes.
as you probably know, all of you, that a digital rupee also has been announced, will be launched this year, which means
Yes.
CBDC, Central Bank Digital Currency, has come into being in India, one of the few countries in the world where CBDC is recognized, which is, I think, the real story is in this, and not so much in the taxation of the crypto for taxing the gains for during trading of crypto. I think this we should keep in mind. I think by end of the year we will have a digital currency from the RBI, so that will help transactions and remove transaction costs or lower transaction costs, lower banking transaction costs, and probably will open up another total subsector for new funds and new players, new fintech companies, new entrepreneurs to try to develop products around this. I hope this answer was okay.
Yes, definitely, sir. And we would like to
Can I
hear.
step in for this?
Yes, sure, sir.
Yeah, sure. I totally agree with you. This in a way is legitimizing the cryptocurrency. And but I would like to mention here that I'm from the investment industry. A lot of gullible small investor who are indulging in trading in cryptocurrency. And I'm very happy that we are the first government all over where we have indirectly legitimizing the cryptocurrency, and there will be regulation going forward. So I am quite hopeful that some regulation is required and government is on the right path.
Yes, I think this
And
is a good point actually.
Dr. Bhavna, to your question whether this would eliminate the frauds, I think the frauds would remain, and there has to be a separate, the investor have to be cautious about it, the regulator have to be watchful about it, and the enforcement agencies all the more, given the very character of the cryptocurrencies. So the frauds would remain, but then by the act of the government, maybe it would be lesser, and the government would be able to, and the enforcement agency would be able to track it fast.
definitely, sir. And I hope that it is coming from the horse's mouth since you have answered it. So we are taking it on a very positive note, and we are very hopeful that with the digital currency, that is the rupee, the CBDC, when it is coming up, it is going to give a lot of strength to our Indian rupee on the international front. We are very positive for that. Okay, so the next question is for Mr. Narendra Wadhwaji. Sir, the question to you is that we have seen that in the past 1 month, there is a lot of selling, which is taking place by the FIIs. So, what do you think that will there be, a more buying trend in the coming next week because of the announcements done by the Honorable Finance Minister on maybe, the LIC's IPO and the other things which, she has stated? Do you think that there will be some more positive trend? Because today we have seen the numbers of Sensex and Nifty and even the Bank Nifty. All the numbers were, mostly in the positive only. So, how's your outlook on that, sir?
See, to predict the market is a very difficult thing, but I'll try to answer it. See, in last 2 years, all the central banks have printed money, and majorly it was the US. A lot of investment has come to India from FPIs, the foreign institutional investor. What we have seen in last 2 months, there is a there is a tendency of going it back to its origin. So it is coming from the the announcement of the Fed in US and the hardening of the interest rate, which we have to see in our RBI policy also on 9th of February. If they harden this interest rate, a lot of money will go back to its origin. So that is what I foresee. And regarding LIC issue, yeah, definitely there is a local money which is chasing these markets. Say people had nothing to do in during the COVID period. Whatever money was there, only one market was moving. That was the stock market. So they have, they have tried to participate in these rallies, and there are, a lot of inquiries about LIC issues. Hopefully, people will participate in the growth of our economy. Say what finance minister has said today. Say we are going to have a GDP growth of around 9%. Say there is hardly any economy. I mean, we are the only economy which is showing 9% of GDP. If that kind of growth is there in the economy, it will reflect in our equity markets. So it is for the investor to participate in the growth of our country.
Yeah, definitely, we are very fortunate. I would say to have a growth rate of 9%, and again, the similar trend of 8 to 8.5 is expected for the next financial year also. And sir, we have one more question related to this from the audience. Dr. Rohit Seth wants to ask that what all are the sectors in which you think that general public would like to invest, and what all are the promising sectors coming up in the stock markets?
Is this for me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. This is for yeah.
So again, I'll repeat my earlier remarks. There is a huge outlay of capex in the budget. So future is for infrastructure sector only. So try to focus on infrastructure sector. There's a lot of highways are to be built, and you can participate in the iron, cement, or these companies who are making these infrastructure. You can participate in that. Again, there will be consumption. There is a consumption story. Demographically, 70% of our population is below 35 or 30, and there is going to be focus on consumption. A lot of focus in today's budget is around our rural economy. They have announced vibrant village program. So the demand will come from the rural economy. So you can focus on anything to do with the rural economy, irrigation, or something like that, so, or around consumption. So huge scope, and especially the banking sector. Say we have discussed about. I was listening to earlier speaker. Lot of demand for credit in our country, and we are a capital starved country. Although in a private space, a lot of private money is coming. So we are a credit starved country. Huge scope for these banks, private sector banks. So you can focus on those investment opportunities. Over to you, Bhavna ji.
Okay. Thank you so very much.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Any other panelist who would like to? Yeah.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes.
Yeah. Good evening, sir and ma'am. It's like what we see in the crypto, that government implement 30% taxes, and even we are talking about might be the regulation of SEBI and RBI. So is the government want to change the basic framework of the crypto? Like the main framework is that it is decentralized. And if I'm not wrong, is this like just a tobacco? Like government, they just give the advertisement that it cause cancer, but it's free to sell in the India. What the government want is just to get the tax. Do whatever you want, just pay me taxes. Is it like
okay.
that?
Yeah. Okay. So any panelist who would like to take up this question?
Something has been talked about this digital asset, and if you see the twofold announcement by the Honorable Finance Minister, at the one side imposing the tax at the rate of 30% on the profits and without giving any expenditure out of them. On the other side, introducing the digital rupee in the market in the near future.
So you can correlate both these things. In the international market, the cryptocurrency used to be traded, and India cannot remain in isolation because it is a worldwide pattern. Many countries have already brought in the tax structure so far as the digital assets are concerned. So by remain in isolation from the world, it would be difficult for the country. So I think the imposing a tax which is the maximum marginal rate of tax, and without giving any carryover of the losses, and without giving any of the deduction. So one side they have kept it open for the investor, and the other side they are planning to come out with the RBI digital rupee, and that will may not be declared as the digital asset, because recognizing the digital asset in the budget is also a very important move. We need to see how they have recognized it as an asset. And when the RBI currency will be coming in as a digital rupee, that will not be asset, that should have been, or that might be only the currency only. So with this perspective, I think we should see about the taxability of the this cryptocurrencies.
Very rightly
You're very
said.
right. The definition of digital asset is yet to be released. I mean, because the fine print is yet to come out. We have to see whether what all will qualify as digital asset.
Yeah, but just to add to CA Rohit and to, I think, Sandeep, that see, we need to differentiate between CBDC, which is issued by fiat of government, means RBI. It's a digital currency with a par value 1 rupee. So instead of carrying 1 rupee in my pocket, if I have 1 rupee equivalent of digital currency, it is for payments. It's not a store of value as such. Digital asset like Bitcoin, Ethereum, etc. are both. You can use it for payments / transactions, and also it is store of value because its value keeps shifting day to day, hour to hour. So you're right that what is the definition of digital asset is out there, but there's so many, there are 2,000 or 3,000 types of cryptocurrencies in the world. So which ones will they take as legitimate? Will NFT be a legitimate currency or not? These are some issues which I think will early days, but I think they will work it out in a year or so when usage picks up and government is able to understand which are the cryptocurrencies which are being traded and where there is store of value, where there's profit to be made, which is acceptable as a currency. And secondly, is NFT going to be also equivalent to a digital asset? Yes, it is a digital asset, but will it also be, supposing I've got Hussein painting NFT, then I sell that NFT at a large value, will I be taxed on that NFT asset when I sell that NFT to someone else? So those issues I think will come up, but I suspect they'll apply the same principle of 30% tax on that. So we might have a default situation coming out.
Okay. So any other panelists who would like to add anything to it? Okay. So just a last word that definitely being, doing the regulation for the crypto exchanges does not mean that we are going to decentralize the basic essence of the crypto, whether we call it as currency or we call it as asset, and also for the case of NFTs. So the basic, the ground is the decentralization only, and it is based on blockchain. So definitely regulation has nothing to do with the, the controlling or making it more centralized. It is just to protect the investors from getting away from, from getting into any kind of frauds or maybe, any kind of criminal activity. So it is just to protect that. Okay. So we go to the next question now, and it is for CA Rohit Vaswani ji. Sir, this question has come up from the audience that what are your tips to the individuals for managing the personal finance, given that there are no more relief by the way of changes in the tax slab?
Oh, we have very, less number of legitimate avenues in the for the personal finance, and that will remain as it is, because that is not much talked about in this budget so far as the personal finance is concerned. But certainly, the income of the per capita income, I am seeing that it is going to be increased. And one thing which was expected to be announced regarding the peak level of surcharge, and that has been touched only in case of LTCG, and that too on securities, but it has not been touched for other income. And let's see the fine prints of the finance bill also. So there should have been done something so far as the personal finance is concerned. But as I told initially, that this budget is aiming mainly the micro issues of implementation of these all schemes on the floor of the country. Now it is not a budget which is only talked about. Now the budgets are coming which is talked about and which is seen also on the floor and which is discussed in detail also. So that is the positive sides of the budget now which we are seeing. It is not only the piece of paper which used to be the earlier in many cases. So let's hope something better in the next budget.
Definitely, sir. Okay. So, and moreover, sir, you can always say, that these kind of personal advices are always charged, yeah, as a chartered accountant. Just on a lighter note, sir. Yeah. So, okay. So the next question is for Mr. Sandeep Mahindru. Sir, this question has come up from the audience that how the sector of trade finance will react to the budget for the coming year 22-23, and so far as the domestic and the international trading is concerned.
Sure, sure. So on the trade finance, lots have been done, and I'm so happy that someone has asked this question, and it is outside the budget. So if you are aware that, and in one of the panelists, esteemed panelist has mentioned that MSMEs financing options are limited. It takes a longer time for a bank to sanction and to disperse the payment. It's a lot of paperwork involved, and MSMEs get a delayed payment that is not solved. And I, as an organization, is on that track to solve the delayed payments as trade finance. So on trades on M1 exchange, this can be a solution that MSMEs could look at, wherein they are selling their receivables for financing their receivables without we do not evaluate their balance sheet, we only evaluate their customer. So therefore, no collateral, no paperwork, fully digital. People are accessing from 600 cities using mobile phone and getting their invoices discounted. Now, how is government supporting it with this background? So far, only banks are financing your invoices, which are getting financed in the range of about 6% to 11-12% per annum, without any collateral, without any security. Now, and without any recourse to you. Now, this financing will also be done by the NBFCs. This has been approved by the Parliament by change in the Factoring Act, wherein NBFCs can also do the financing of the receivable on trades M1. So therefore, the liquidity is going to increase multifold. This has just been passed as a regulation about 2-3 months ago, and now RBI has released a notification about 5 days back. So you will see that a lot of liquidity will come in on that side, number one. Number two, on the international trade finance, government has again allowed us to set up a similar process for international invoices to be discounted from the gift city, which is in Ahmedabad. Now, this does not mean you have to be present in the gift city. This is again digital. You again put your international invoice on the platform from your respective location, and you will get financing at international rates in foreign currency from the banks, either in gift city or outside India, under legitimate laws. So more details I can share over a period of time. I mean, or maybe you can write to me. Further details I can provide this.
Yeah, I would like to add, Sandeep has made some two very important points, I think, which I think we should note, and WASME should also circulate some kind of newsletter update, because a lot of people don't know about trades and factoring and reverse factoring. We in my company, one of the pioneers in factoring, reverse factoring, of course, using banks as our partners, but with NBFCs now open to lending, the panoply of products available on a marketplace like a trades, and the price, rather the cost of funds will get mediated so that it will become affordable. And I think that is one huge change which we may see. Non-securitized collateral based on your receivables, your order book, whatever it is, analytics using to see what is a good client, customer, and these I think will probably in some way subvent or rather disintermediate dependency on central government traditional credit or bank traditional credit. I think this is quicker, Insta loan, Insta credit, and as he said about the gift city, that also I think nobody knows, but it's I think it is a big big moment, frankly, to be able to do that for invoices and for foreign credit financing at cheaper rates, or your domestic banks with foreign credit. That will enable MSMEs to get into the space quickly and take up global orders also, not get stuck for working capital depending on their larger partner, which might be a larger company, to streamline the credit for them, friends and family, etc. I think these two are possibly very important, very important, which we have forgotten, but we need to highlight.
Dr. Bhavna, Haldia this side.
Yes,
I think
sir.
what innovation needs to take place in terms of MSME financing, which the banks, the government should look into, and I believe the institution like WASME should start advocacy for that, is the entire value chain funding. If you are an industry and you are dependent for components or inputs from 10 MSMEs, why that company and the 10 MSME need to approach separately to the banks for their funding requirements? Why not all their funding requirements be clubbed together and made in a one proposal, and the banks look at that entire one proposal? Now, if that is done, it brings far more discipline, the pragmatism, and also a greater sensibility in assessing the viability of the funding. So I believe the value chain funding is something, and it's difficult for MSMEs to approach to the banks to form part of the queue, to do the due diligence, to provide the documents, and then to stand up to the test of the viability. They know how to run the business, but they were not able to respond to the banks in terms of their questions on the viabilities. So I believe that's something which the government, the banks, and the institution like WASME should look into. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your valuable suggestions, sir. We have been already taken up this matter, and we are advocating to the government on different matters. Prabir will highlight all the things, since he is already into this financial sector. So he will highlight what WASME is doing. Yes, Prabir.
Yeah, actually, a good point made by Ashok Haldia. I'm happy to say that WASME has actually been highlighting this last mile access to credit for quite some time. We have talked about Udyan platforms, GEMS platform, Bharat Mart, Treads, and now Digital Desh E. So there are some schemes the government has started for creating a marketplace for credit for MSMEs. And I think Udyan platform is a foundation for that, and GEMS is also for smaller industries to board. It's like the Alibaba equivalent in India. So only thing that is for buyer seller, but if a credit marketplace can be a sub component of that, then like today we have most of the big sites, Flipkart, Amazon, all have BNPL, buy now pay later schemes, right? So they are now giving credit to the customers to buy and then take EMI on that. So obviously some regulation will need to come in there, but similarly on these traditional merchant boarding systems, merchant marketplaces, they can add credit also. We are doing it every day. We have 130,000 MSMEs on our marketplace where we mediate between the banks to give them credit based on their last 10 years invoices, payables, receivables. We have a visibility into their entire operating cycle because they are boarded with us, and we track it on a second by second basis, 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. Based on that, the analytics pushes out who are the reliable, valuable customers, and then we give them credit from banks based on certain payment rails, commercial payment rails, without them having to actually open an account in a bank, or not open an account, but maybe go to the bank and go through all the hoops and jumps that are there. So this is at a private level, yeah, we are providing, but as you said, there can be many people who provide that, and they can all hook onto BharatMat, onto GEMS, so that any MSME buyer seller can immediately go like Policy Bazaar and check out what is the best place for me to get quick 30-day 2 lakh loan, or 45-day 1 lakh loan, or 90-day 5 lakh loan, and he can keep playing with it and optimize it. And then obviously he will soft board all his data, and the company using analytics will be able to take a call on giving him credit. And just want to add, and Dr. Bhavna had mentioned about credit uptick in MSMEs. Dr. Bhavna, you might also know that the fintech's delinquency rate, fintech's lending delinquency rate, is half that of public, private, and NBFCs.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? It means that while fintechs may not have the same vast value and volume as these fellows, but their quality of their lending is at a much higher level, because of which your NPA/delinquency is half that of the balance of the sector. So this shows that fintech is a viable lending model. So because their quality of lending is based on a lot of algorithms and tracking, and on professional reasons, and you don't have to do MyBab to anybody. So I think that shows that fintech lending, which again the budget has talked about, fintech as a for lending and fintech industry for lending, that will see a boost. And coupled with what Sandeep said, or somebody Haldia said, NBFCs also can now be part of that. That means one more bucket of credit possibilities there for MSMEs. So they will come on my platform and also be able to offer products to my MSME on my ARAP platform, accounts receivables, accounts payables platform. They will also able to choose. And so it's a double credit availability actually.
Okay, thank you so very much, sir. And since we are running out of time, so I would just take last two questions. And this question has come up again from the audience. This question is to Haldia sir specifically, that sir, since we have seen that you are very closely associated with IBC also. So sir, we would like to ask you that since we have seen that IBC has surpassed the recovery, as compared to the SARFAESI Act, or maybe as compared to the previous DRTs and NCLTs. So do you think that government is going to more empower this IBC for tackling the problem of NPAs in the coming few months, or maybe in the coming year?
The finance minister in her proposals have underlined the importance of IBC, and she had made three announcements. One is that the attempt would be made to enhance the efficacy and efficiency of IBC mechanism, meaning thereby that the time taken in the resolution process would be reduced and the valuation and the value realized should be increased. And the second thing which is important is the voluntary liquidation process would be streamlined so that the voluntary liquidation can take place in maybe the 6 months time. And a third is which is the cross-border insolvency that the government intent contemplates. The point is that we are looking at a patient when it reaches to a chronic ICU stays. And we need to change our perspective. We need to look at the stress at the incipient stage and start dealing the sickness at the incipient stage. Once we do that, then the IBC would become redundant and the last resort. And that's what a mature economy and the financial sector would aim at. Not that the government was not aware of. The IBC in terms of CIRP process was brought in India because of the ecosystem and the limitations in the Indian context. So we thought that the CIRP should be first option. When the CIRP is institutionalized, then we will look at the resolution outside the IBC, and that is what the emphasis of the government is. And the pre-pack scheme which the government has brought in to begin with for the MSME, largely for MSMEs, and that is bringing an informal resolution process and the formal resolution process together to enable resolution at a very faster pace. So I would believe in the times to come, IBC would become far more stronger, but at the same time, the focus would be on the resolution outside the IBC. And if you see, the after the pre-pack scheme has come in, the bankers' emphasis on resolving sickness through the IBC has reduced a great extent. They have all evolved a very transparent and at less time consuming settlement schemes which are transparent, and they prefer the settlement of overdues or the NPAs rather than taking those cases to the for resolution to the IBC. So I would believe that's a good. That's a good happening, and I would believe we should move to more towards the negotiation, settlement, and arbitration in the times or mediation in the times to come.
Definitely. Definitely, sir. And with that, we will be able to overcome the concept of recapitalization also, that, the immunity boosters which we keep on giving to our public sector banks specifically.
And the question that you posed first, the what is happening to the bad bank. The idea of the bad bank is not to address the corporate distress at the IBC stage, but to address that before that
Yes.
stress reaches to the IBC stage.
So, sir, can we see some development for the bad banks also?
I think bad bank, the news that came yesterday or day before was that it has been operationalized. Earlier, there were some issues between the regulatory approvals as to RBI was not comfortable in the two-tier structure of the bad bank. But yesterday, I read that it has been institutionalized and they have identified the bad assets to be taken over.
Yeah.
And that's what the finance minister said in her budget, that the bad bank as well as DFI both have been made operational.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you so very much, sir. And the last question for this session is about the inflation and about the rising oil prices. We all know that the oil prices are not determined domestically. Definitely, that depends upon the import price specifically, but still for a Aam Aadmi and for the general public, this question is coming up again and again, that what measures will the government take to curb the oil prices, and how they are going to tackle the inflation. So I would request Mr. Narendra Wadhwaji to start the answer, and any other panelist who would like to join him can answer it. Yeah. So I think Mr. Narendra Wadhwaji is not here. So, sir, this forum is open. Mr.
Yeah, the budget is a growth-oriented budget. Its focus is on the investment, and investment and the capex would normally lead to the, if not supported by the productions supply side, then it would normally lead to the inflation. And a moderate inflation is always good. It's
Good,
not
yeah.
bad. But the challenge before the government is the inflation that comes through the imports. So the higher import price that goes in as an input, and many of the MSMEs are facing that challenge because their input prices have increased and they are not in a position to negotiate, and they do not have a bargaining strength to reduce that input price. They cannot influence that. So the danger of the influence remains. But the good thing is that as the finance minister also said, that they have a fiscal flexibility or the headways or the room to deal with that, considering the growth in the economy, prospects of growth in the economy, the forex, the balance available with us, and that gives a lot of flexibility to the government to deal with the inflation if it arises. But if you ask a question between what you will choose between inflation and the growth, I would say growth is a better option if the inflation is kept under control.
Every economist would say so, sir, and even I agree very strongly to this point that some small.
But then with the inflation, you need to take care of equidistribution, the social justice,
Yes.
because the
And
gap between the haves and have not would bound to increase, and therefore the government has to address that the gap is minimized, and their social schemes are far more extensive and effective.
Definitely, very rightly said, sir. So with this, we come to the end of this webinar. And once again, I'm very, very thankful to the TDP and WASME for hosting this webinar, for giving us this platform to have this discussion. And I would like to thank all the eminent speakers, starting from Dr. Ashok Haldia ji and Mr. Narendra Wadhwa ji, Mr. Prabir Roy, Mr. Sandeep Mahindru, and Mr. Rohit Vaswani ji. We are very thankful to all of you. It was really a very power-packed, very knowledgeable and inspiring session. And I'm very hopeful that our audience, have learned so many things about the budget, and there are so much of the takeaways from this session, but still there are some questions which are still unanswered, and we are hopeful that with the coming months government would take more initiatives to curb the inflation and to open up more avenues for the employment, to see and to regulate each and every front, be it on the capital market or maybe on the cryptocurrency. So once again, thank you very much. And over to you, Sanjeev, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Bhavna, for moderating it so well.
Thank you, sir. Over to you, Sanjeev, sir. Yeah.
Okay, it is pleasure to thank you all the esteemed panelists over here. This is our privilege to host this kind of session. I would like to extend our thank from WASME and the TDP team that you have done well, and our participants have already understood some of the concepts over there. And I would like to just request all the participants to just have the feedback from the chat box already shared. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
So much. Yes.
Thank you.